Hi, I'm Hannah, and you are in my spoken, still working on it series. And today I'm going to read my essay, A Quiet Goodbye. A Quiet Goodbye. The boy who came to visit. Charlie and I are 10.5 months apart. I never met siblings as close in age as we are. My mother got pregnant 6 weeks after I was born, which means I don't know life without my little brother. We were joined at the hip our entire childhood. Our bond was just a fact, like weather, like the flat Kansas sky we grew up under. When we were around 10, a cousin from the Philippines came to stay with us. He was close to 20, so we assumed he wouldn't want much to do with us. Too old to play, too grown to care. We were wrong. He did everything with us: fishing, the fair, shooting hoops, running around in the backyard. Anything two small town 10-year-olds did, he came along. What we didn't know then, what we had no way of knowing, was that he knew exactly who we were the whole time. We were his brother and sister. We were just kids enjoying our big cousin. He was making up for lost time. Then our mother told us the truth. He was her son, conceived when she was just 16, raised by my grandparents because she was still a child herself. And now here is this word, brother, dropped into the middle of what Charlie and I already were, this tight, unbreakable thing, with no instructions for how it was supposed to fit. It didn't exactly, it couldn't. He was already gone, restless in small town Kansas, headed to Las Vegas where our uncle lived. So it became phone calls, occasional visits, and the shape of the relationship that never quite caught up to its name. The darkness I watched from a distance. I've always been drawn to stories of darkness, not in the obvious way, not simple curiosity or an appetite for drama. I think it's less about understanding and more about feeling. We all have a darkness, but some go there freely. They don't flinch from it. They get comfortable inside it. And watching them is a way of experiencing something we keep at a careful distance. We don't want to go there ourselves, so we watch. I watched the Lamar Odom documentary recently looking for that. Not the fall. I already knew the fall. Days in a Nevada brothel, alone in the dark with drugs and paid company, until his body finally gave out and someone found him. I wasn't watching for the details. I was watching for whether any light had gotten through afterward, whether surviving something like that had cracked him open at all. I'm not sure it had, or maybe he just couldn't show it yet. That's what I'm always looking for in those stories, the sliver, the moment someone reaches for something other than what is destroying them. What I didn't expect was to one day go looking for that darkness on foot, in real streets, with my own bloodline. The first time I went, I was 29. His friends had called, a wonderful couple who he had stood up for in their wedding. I can picture him there, dressed up, smile bigger than life, standing beside them with so much love and pride. That was him, always smiling, always singing, loud, uninhibited, and not particularly well, though that never once stopped him. He sang and danced like no one was watching. His laugh was the kind that filled the room before the joke was even finished. That young man feels far away now, but that's who I was flying to find. His friends told me that he had been addicted to meth for several years, somehow managing to hold down jobs and keep an apartment. But addiction does what addiction does. It took him over. He lost his job, he was evicted, and ended up on the streets. When things got dire, his friends decided family needed to know, so they called me. They arranged it carefully. The next time he came around, they would tell him I wanted to visit, ask him to come back the following weekend. I would fly in and we would all stay together. Beautiful friends. They picked me up at the airport, my brother in the back seat. We hugged. I teared up a little, but not too much. I could tell he wanted to act like everything was okay, so I followed his lead. I had braced myself without realizing it. The only drug addicts I had ever known were the ones from movies. Track marks, missing teeth, hollowed out. When I saw him, I was caught off guard. He was just as I remembered. Handsome, fit, smiling, a little thinner, a little darker. His skin had a weathered look up close, leathery in a way I hadn't seen before. His hair was gray. I had never seen him with gray hair. He always kept it black. I don't know why I was surprised. If I didn't dye my hair, it would look like my brother. That night, he slept on the couch and I took the Murphy bed. I told him to come in and we snuggled. I was afraid, though I didn't say so. I had never knowingly been around someone on those kind of drugs, and I didn't know what to expect up close. The next morning we walked. His home base, the streets of Castro, the ones he knew by feel. I noticed him scanning the ground as we moved and didn't think much of it until the fourth or fifth coin. After that, I started looking too. To this day, I can't pass a coin on the ground without thinking of him. On one of our walks, we passed a convenience store, and he asked if we could go in. I knew he wasn't asking for me. I knew I would be buying whatever he needed. So I said, sure, I need a drink anyway. He wanted hair dye. Back at his friend's house, he asked for a towel, and they knew immediately what he was about to do. Clearly, he had done it there before. He took off his shirt, still lean, still fit, wrapped a towel around his neck, and bent his head forward and started working the dye through his hair. It was an odd technique until I recognized it. It was exactly the way my mother colors her hair. The next day we went to a meeting. He spoke briefly, just to introduce me. I spoke and said everything I hadn't been able to say directly, everything we'd been carefully not saying since I arrived. He cried, I cried. We walked out into the San Francisco afternoon and went to lunch, and I brought up rehab. He said no. I didn't know what to do with that. If it had been Charlie, I would have put him in the car myself and drove him there. But this relationship had a different weight to it, a different set of rules I was still learning. I was lost for what my place was. Sunday came and I had a flight to catch. I told his friends about the rehab conversation, and we all just left it there, not knowing what came next. The church. It was almost a year later when his friends called again. In between, they kept me posted, Facebook updates, FaceTime calls when he would come by their house. I held on to those, but I knew this call was different as soon as I picked up. They hadn't seen him in months, which was very unlike him. I booked a flight. Jared and I had just started dating, and he was not going to let me go alone. He showed up for that early, and I didn't take that lightly. We booked a hotel in the Castro District, his home base, the streets I had walked with him the first time. We arrived Thursday evening and checked in. The man at the front desk was Filipino. In Kansas and Texas and Colorado, I would have made something of that. I always do. Some instinct of recognition, one of my own. In San Francisco, it was common enough that I noted it quietly to Jared and let it go. That night, we went straight to the streets. I remember the smell first. The particular weight of urine on warm pavement, the way you hold your breath moving past someone sleeping on flattened cardboard. I would slow down just enough to glance at their faces without being seen. I was holding my breath for more than just the smell. Somewhere in those first few hours of walking, it occurred to me, what am I going to do when I actually find him? That's the fear no one talks about when someone's missing. We frame the search as the hard part, the finding as the relief. But I knew better. Finding him was its own kind of reckoning. Would he be high? Would he recognize me? Would he want to be found? We walked Thursday night, all day Friday, all day Saturday. Shelters, cafeterias, streets we'd already covered twice. People recognized his photo. Yes, I know him. I've seen him. But we couldn't catch up. By Saturday night, our feet were wrecked and we had nothing. We walked back to our hotel with our heads down. The man at the front desk was the same man who had checked us in Thursday night. Tired and disappointed, I held the photo up anyways. "Yeah," he said, "I know him. There's a Catholic church up the street. He's there every Sunday." We had been coming home to our best lead every night without knowing it. The next morning we went to the church and there he was. White t-shirt, clean. Jeans, a flannel tied around his waist. He was thin in a way that takes your breath away. Not frail, just reduced, like something had slowly been taken away from him over a long time. But he was clean and he was singing so loud that his voice was the only thing I heard when I walked through the door. I went to him, tapped him on the arm. He turned. We didn't say much. We just held on. And then we sat there together and he kept singing and I held his hand. The back window. When Mass ended, I took charge the way I know how. "Where do you want to go for lunch?" I said. Cheesecake factory, he said. He walked us to a nearby hotel, and I thought he had lost his mind entirely until we got into the elevator and it opened up to the restaurant. We sat outside on the balcony. A seagull kept coming to the glass, bold and persistent, and we were all fascinated by it. Or maybe it just offered a welcome distraction. I asked about rehab. He didn't really answer. What came out didn't quite make a sentence. The words were there, but the thread between them gone. I kept listening, kept nodding, kept trying to find him in what he was saying. The man who had been singing every word of Mass an hour earlier, that had been muscle memory. Actual conversation just wasn't there anymore. I didn't eat. I packaged everything up and kept the bags close so he could have it later. After lunch, I asked where the nearest store was. He needed socks, underwear, anything that he could fit in his backpack. He kept asking for a phone. I resisted for a while, turning it over in my mind. How would he pay the bill? How would he keep it charged? Keep it from being stolen? But eventually I broke. We found him a phone and the store showed me how to reload it each month. We took it back to our hotel lobby to grab our bags before the airport. Our Filipino friend was gone. The shift had changed. My brother found an outlet and plugged the phone in and sat there while we waited as if he had all the time in the world. We stayed as long as we could. Then it was time. The three of us got into a cab headed for the airport. He didn't want to get too far from his home base, so somewhere along the way he asked the driver to stop. We hugged, we cried, he got out. I watched him through the back window as the cab pulled away. He was standing on the sidewalk with an impossibly heavy backpack, waving a little, staring after us with an expression I still can't fully name. And then he turned and walked away as if I had never been there. Why I went. I've thought about that trip a lot since, both trips. What I was looking for, what I hoped to find beyond just finding him. I think it was a quiet goodbye. Some part of me already knew how this ended, and I needed to say it in person, to sit beside him in a pew and hold his hand while he sang, to buy him socks, to watch him through a cab window for as long as I could. But there was something else underneath the goodbye, something that I didn't have a name for until I sat with it long enough. I wanted him to know he was loved, not loved despite everything, loved inside of it. Loved at his darkest and his hardest place, with his impossibly heavy backpack and his gray hair and his sentences that didn't quite connect. I needed him to feel it in a way that words couldn't carry. That's why I showed up. That's why I walked those streets. That's why I held his hands while he sang. Some love can't rescue. It can only show up, stay as long as it's allowed, and then watch from the back window as the distance grows. He was my brother. The word never quite fit the relationship we had, but it was always true, and I think he knew that. I think that's why he sang so loud.